TSMV Manunda was an Australian-registered and crewed passenger ship which was converted to a hospital ship in 1940. During the war, Manunda saw service in both the Middle East and Pacific campaigns, specifically New Guinea. She resumed her passenger duties after the war, before being sold to a Japanese company and finally broken up in 1957. Design and construction. In 1927, the Adelaide Steamship Company in Australia ordered a new 9115 GRT liner to provide full-time Australian coastal passenger services, which had previously only been offered by the company on a limited scale. The twin-screw motor vessel Manunda was built by William Beardmore and Company at Dalmuir in Scotland. The vessel was 136 meters in length, with a beam of 18 meters. Diesel motors provided power to the two propeller shafts, with a top speed of 15 knots. Passenger capacity was 176 first class and 136 second class. The ship was launched on the 27th of November 1928, and completed on the 16th of April 1929. She was the largest ship operated by the Adelaide Steamship Company at the time, and as a result of her success the company commissioned a larger, faster sister ship, Manora, which was completed in 1935. Operational history. Early career. She arrived in Australia in June 1929 to begin her duties on the Australian coastal trade, running passengers and cargo between Sydney, Fremantle, Melbourne and Cairns. In late 1929, Manunda rammed Birkenhead Wharf in Adelaide. World War II. The declaration of war saw Manunda fitted out as DEM's ship, under the control of the Australian Shipping Control Board. During the process of converting it into a hospital ship, the No. 1 hold was deemed to be dangerous and never rectified. One death and several officers were injured due to the complications with the design. She was converted into a hospital ship at Sydney in compliance with the Geneva Convention regulations and was taken over by the authorities on 25 May 1940, and entered service as AS Manunda on the 22nd of July 1940, under Captain James Garden, previously the captain of the Adelaide Steamship Company Manora and Commodore of the Adelaide Steamship Fleet. The General Hospital based on board was commanded by Lt. Colonel John Beth. Members of the Australian Army Nursing Service on board were led by Matron Clara Jane Schumack. Manunda sailed on a shakedown cruise to Darwin, Port Moresby and returned to Sydney, before heading for Suez in the Middle East. She was then dispatched to Darwin. On the morning of the 19th of February 1942, Manunda was damaged during the Japanese air raids on Darwin. Despite her highly prominent Red Cross markings on a white background, 12 members of the ship's crew and hospital staff were killed, 19 others were seriously wounded and another 40 received minor wounds. Manunda was able to act as a casualty clearing station for injured personnel from other ships involved in the attack. She sailed to Fremantle the next day. Captain James Garden was later awarded the OBE in 1945 for his bravery and skill, both during the attacks, in leading a fire extinguishing team on the ship and in later navigating it by the stars to Fremantle with no navigation equipment and a jury-rigged steering system. After a refit in Adelaide, she went to Milne Bay in Papua New Guinea, where she acted as a floating hospital for the Allied forces who were stationed there. She spent several nights in Milne Bay during attacks by Japanese warships, but her status as a hospital ship was, on this occasion, honored by Japanese naval units, which raked her with searchlights on 3 nights running. She made a total of 27 voyages from Milne Bay to Brisbane and Sydney transporting wounded troops. As the war continued, she was relocated as required and she followed the Allied forces services the various islands around the Pacific. 6 days after the sinking of Ars Centaur, a request was made by the Australian Department of Defence that the identification markings and lights be removed from Australian hospital ship Manunda, weapons be installed, and the ship begin to sail blacked out and under escort. The conversion was performed, although efforts by the Department of the Navy, the Admiralty, and authorities in New Zealand and the United States of America caused the completed conversion to be undone. The cost of the roundabout work came to £12,500 and kept Manunda out of service for 3 months. On the 9th of June 1943, communications between the combined chiefs of staff on the subject of hospital ships contained a section referring to the Manunda incident as a response to the attack on Centaur, with the conclusion that the attack was the work of an irresponsible Japanese commander, and that it would be better to wait until further attacks had been made before considering the removal of hospital ship markings. Manunda's final wartime voyage was to New Zealand transporting civilian passengers. During the war she carried approximately 30,000 casualties to safety. After the Japanese surrender, Manunda was dispatched to Singapore to repatriate ex-POWs and civilian internees who had been imprisoned in Changi prison. She also sailed to Labuan in Borneo to pick up ex-POWs and civilian internees from Batu Lintang camp. Post-war career, Manunda was decommissioned in September 1946 and received an extensive 18-month refit in Melbourne. She returned to service on the 2nd of April 1948, transporting passengers around the Australian coast. In September 1956 she was withdrawn from service and sold to the Japanese Okada Gumi Line, who renamed the vessel Hakone Maru. The company's plans for the ship did not eventuate, and she was broken up the next year in Japan, arriving in Osaka for scrapping on the 18th of June 1957. Citations